Yo, what is going on, everyone? My name is Nick, or the Notorious Fantasy, and in today's video, we're going to be talking about my week number 6 running back start or sit decisions for fantasy football in 2021. Inside today's video, I'm going to be going in depth into every single matchup from Thursday Night Football all the way until Monday Night Football, and I'll be telling you guys whether I believe you should start or sit the notable running backs in every single matchup. But before we do get on into things, I would like to ask if you are new to the channel and you do end up enjoying today's video, to please make sure that you do hit that subscribe button down below. Not only is it free, I put out content every single day to help you guys win your 2021 Fantasy Football Championship. And while you're down there, whether you are new to the channel or not, please make sure you do hit that like button down below to help boost this video up the algorithm so that more beautiful people like yourself can see today's video. I'd also like to ask if you guys are on Twitter and would like to follow me, to please do so at NotoriousFNTSY. The link to my Twitter is also down below in the description. So without further ado, let's get into my week number 6 running back start or sit decisions. We begin with Thursday Night Football, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at the Philadelphia Eagles. In this game, I am only comfortable starting one running back, and that is running back of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Leonard Fournette. And going into the season, from the offseason, from the draft season, I would have never told you that I was 100% confident in any running back for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, because dating back to last year, the running back room there was so unclear. Some games would be the Leonard Fournette game, and then Bruce Arians would go to the podium after the game. He said, you know what? Leonard Fournette had this excellent game. Leonard Fournette's our guy this week. And then you appear at next week, after he said that it's going to be the Leonard Fournette week. And you know what happens? A healthy dosage of Ronald Jones, because Leonard Fournette makes one minute mistake. But it appears this year that Leonard Fournette has a clear stranglehold over this backfield, and he is the clear number 1 running back for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So I will continue to roll him out there, and I will roll him out here this week up against the Philadelphia Eagles. He had a very big matchup up against the Miami Dolphins last week. The other Buccaneers running backs, Ronald Jones as well as Giovanni Bernard, are going to be sits for me in this game. Again, this isn't the worst matchup for a running back, but if Leonard Fournette is going to be seeing a majority of the carries, a majority of the targets, like he has at least the last couple of weeks, then Ronald Jones and Giovanni Bernard are just touchdown relevant running backs, and it's very hard to start a guy that you know needs to score a touchdown in order to have any fantasy relevance. For the Philadelphia Eagles, Miles Sanders has completely and utterly fallen off the edge of a fucking cliff. Nick Sirianni refuses to run the ball, and he refuses to fully commit to Miles Sanders. All offseason, a big discussion for me for this Philadelphia Eagles offense is, will they finally give the reins fully to Miles Sanders? Will they finally let Miles Sanders be the workhorse running back that everyone wants him to become for fantasy football purposes? And a lot of people were saying, yes, this is going to happen. It's a new head coach. I was kind of voting more on the side of caution and saying maybe it is possible that other running backs behind him are touching the ball, very similar to how it's worked for the last couple of years, even with a new head coach there. And that ends up coming true because Kenneth Gainwell is still seeing a decent amount of work. And with how little the Philadelphia Eagles are truly committing to running the ball and giving the ball to Miles Sanders, I feel as though you just cannot start him at this point in the season. Maybe things will change. Maybe Nick Sirianni gives his head a shake and realize that, hey, I need to give Miles Sanders the fucking ball more because he's one of the most talented players in this offense. Or maybe he won't realize it, but until he does realize it, Miles Sanders as well as Kenneth Gainwell are going to be riding the bench for me. Next up, we move to the Saturday morning game in London, baby. The Miami Dolphins at the Jacksonville Jaguars. As a Dolphins fan, I will wake up rock hard for this matchup. I'm so excited to see Tua Tagovailoa back. He is practicing today. Dolphins at the Jacksonville Jaguars. I'm going to believe in Myles Gaskin. I am going to be very optimistic on Myles Gaskin, but you guys have to understand that things could go completely awry this week because now Tua Tagovailoa is under center, and it's not a guarantee that Tua is going to dump the ball off 7,000 times to Myles Gaskin like Jacoby Brissett did last week up against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But if you do a nice inspection into Myles Gaskin's fantasy stats from this season, like your Sherlock Holmes, then you will come to realize that Myles Gaskin's second best game besides last week was the game in week number 1 up against the Patriots when Tua was under center. So maybe when Tua is the starter, they're a lot more comfortable running the ball. The offense works a little bit differently, and that will adhere more to Myles Gaskin. Hopefully that is the case. Hopefully the offensive coordinators, the dual head offensive coordinators in Miami realize, hey, maybe we shouldn't give the ball to Malcolm Brown a couple of times in the game. Maybe we don't need to give the ball to Salvon Ahmed and just let Myles Gaskin cook. Now again, I understand that it is risky, but they are going up against the Jaguars, So if there was ever a game where you could have another splash matchup, it would be here in England up against the Jacksonville Jaguars. For the Jaguars, obviously James Robinson is going to be a start. Urban Meyer can't figure a lot of things out in his life, but what he was able to figure out a couple of weeks ago was how to give the rock to James Robinson, and James Robinson is a key focal point in this offense, which should have been the game plan all offseason, but it wasn't, but it is now. Now, the biggest question mark is going into the second half, James Robinson's workload was basically fucking Fruit Ninja style cut in half, and that was not very helpful for James Robinson's fantasy football value. And then after the game, they say, hey, Urban, what happened? He was like, I didn't notice. How the fuck do you not notice that one of your most productive players on the offense was not out there for a lot in the second half? How do you not notice this? You're the head coach of the football team. What is this guy doing? I have no idea. But at the end of the day, James Robinson will still be getting a lot of rushing opportunities in this game, and the Miami Dolphins defense is atrocious up against the run, so I expect James Robinson to have a field day out there. The other running backs for the Dolphins are going to be sits. That's Malcolm Brown and Salvon Ahmed. Again, the hope is that Myles Gaskin is given that lead role that he deserves. He is clearly the best running back in this backfield, and then Carlos Hyde is a sit for me because when James Robinson is healthy, he is clearly the lead back in Jacksonville. Next up, we move to the real Sunday slate. 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, headlined by the Chiefs at the Washington football team. In this game, I'm going to be firing up Darrell Williams. Now, I know there's a lot of talk about maybe Marlon Mack getting traded there. Maybe they pick up a different running back. And if that is the case, depending on which running back ends up getting shipped off to the Kansas City Chiefs, then maybe I will get worried about Darrell Williams' usage. But at the end of the day, where we are sitting right now with Clyde Edwards-Helaire out seemingly at least the next couple of games, at least 3+ games, it seems like Darrell Williams is in the driver's seat of this offense, and we'll be seeing a bunch of targets as well as rushes in this matchup up against a not so hot Washington football team defense. So he is going to be a must-start running back for me, as long as obviously they don't end up adding anyone or trading for Marlon Mack, because then that will worry me at least a little bit about Darrell Williams' value. Next up for the Washington football team, we have yet another fucking conundrum, because I have no idea every single week the value that J.D. McKissic possesses in this offense. Last week, J.D. McKissic, I'm going to read it off the screen so I get the stats exactly correctly. J.D. McKissic had 2 rushes for -1 yards. He had 4 targets for 1 reception and 8 yards. The week before that, he has 7 rushes for 15 yards. He also has 5 receptions for 44 yards. And then there's weeks where this guy is scoring touchdowns, and then there's weeks where the guy is virtually irrelevant. So it is very hard to crack the code to figure out what the fuck Riverboat Ron is doing with the running backs in this offense. It is so difficult because every week it seems like a completely different thing. And with that said, even up against a Chiefs defense that got absolutely pulverized, pounded deeply into the nighttime, it wasn't even a soft pounding, it was a rough pounding for the Buffalo Bills that they gave to the Kansas City Chiefs. So even with that soft defense in Kansas City, I just don't feel like you can trust J.D. McKissic, so he's going to be riding the bench. Antonio Gibson will be a start for me, but again, every single week, he seems to be a little bit risky because if J.D. McKissic gets in the game more, then there's big opportunity for him to vulture some scoring opportunities from Gibson, but I will start him here. I just love the matchup up against the Chiefs. The other Chiefs running back, Jerick McKinnon, will be a sit for me. Again, I feel as though Darrell Williams is the clear replacement for Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Next up, we move to the LA Rams at the New York Football Giants. In this game, I like Darrell Henderson. It seems like Darrell Henderson is a very safe running back week in and week out, regardless of the opponent, because he is really a key point of Sean McVay's offense here for the LA Rams. He's going to be seeing some pass catching opportunity as well as a bunch of rushing opportunity in the game. I expect the LA Rams to beat the New York Football Giants, which means that maybe they're up later on in the game and they could run the ball even more with Darrell Henderson, which will lead to even more fantasy points. I love him in this game, and when he is active, Sony Michel is basically irrelevant for fantasy football. Now, in real life, he's still going to carve out a decent enough role in this offense to get some work every single game, but he is really just the other guy on the team, and Darrell Henderson is the clear lead back for the LA Rams. I love him this week up against the Giants. For the Giants, Saquon Barkley is hurt with that ankle injury. People are saying that maybe this is going to be a 1-week injury, and then the more I look into it, it seems more like it's going to be like a 2-week injury. But again, I'm not a fucking doctor. I'm also not the Giants doctor, so they may clear Saquon Barkley to go next week, even if he isn't fully 100%. He is clearly not playing in this game, though. He was ruled out. Devontae Booker is now the lead back for the Giants Giants, and even going up against the LA Rams run defense, I expect them to give him a healthy dosage of carries as well as receiving opportunities in this offense. It's basically like when you have Saquon Barkley there, but now it's Devontae Booker. It's the same thing last year with Christian McCaffrey, how it went from Christian McCaffrey to Mike Davis. Now, you might not be seeing the exact same kind of amazing plays that a guy like Christian McCaffrey could make when compared to Mike Davis. It's the same thing here. You're not going to explain or expect some extravagant fucking plays from Devontae Booker, but he's still going to be seeing a very similar workload to what Saquon Barkley would be seeing if he is healthy. So I do expect Devontae Booker to be worthy of a start this week. And the backup running back for the Giants right now is Gary Brightwell. Who the fuck is that guy? So no one should really expect him to be seeing all that many opportunities in this matchup. Next up, we move to the Houston Texans at the Indianapolis Colts, and this one is going to be as simple as it gets. You're going to fire up Jonathan Taylor, and you are going to be sitting down every single other running back. Now, going into last week, in my mind, right before the Monday Night Football game, I started to get real high. Not on drugs, not on the ganja, but on Nyheim Hines. I started to feel like, man, Nyheim Hines might be seeing a bunch of receptions in this game because they're going to be down to the Ravens. The Ravens are going to be just ahead in this game. The Colts are going to try to crawl back, and that's where Nyheim Hines is going to be heavily involved. And the game went the complete and utter opposite to what I thought was going to happen, and probably what a majority of you guys thought was going to happen. The game plan got turned absolutely fucking upside down because they went from having to probably dump the ball off a bunch of times, having to throw the ball aggressively deeper down the stretch, to just trying to win the game down the stretch because they were already up by so many points. So we saw a healthy dosage of Jonathan Taylor. But this week, they're going up against the Texans. The Texans defense sucks complete and utter donkey cock, so I expect Jonathan Taylor to run a train on them just as he did to the Baltimore Ravens last week. The other Texans running backs, you got David Johnson, you got Mark Ingram, you got Phillip Lindsay. Every single week, basically, it's going to be a different one of these motherfuckers, one of these stooges that ends up finding their way into the end zone, that ends up getting a majority of the work. It is very confusing, so you just sit all of them. And again, based upon the game script that I believe is going to be happening here, Nyheim Hines should not be in the game as much because they're not going to be throwing the ball as much on third downs. They're not going to be using Nyheim Hines as much in pass catching situations. And it also seems like Jonathan Taylor actually is really good in pass catching scenarios, which we already knew. So maybe Jonathan Taylor will be getting more usage in that scenario now because Frank Reich realizes, hey, Jonathan Taylor actually is very good at catching passes. We already knew it, but I'm just not too sure Frank Reich did. But before we get on into the next game, I would like to ask, if you have ended up enjoying thus far, to please make sure that you do hit that subscribe button down below if you are new. And whether you are new or not, make sure you hit that like button down below as well. It helps me out a ton. Next matchup here, we got the Cincinnati Bengals at the Detroit Lions. Now, every single week, the DeAndre Swift experiment gets as confusing as it gets because I think the Bengals are going to absolutely shit can the Detroit Lions team. I feel as though the Bengals are going to have an amazing game here, so the Lions will not be able to run the ball as much as you would prefer for DeAndre Swift. But at the end of the day, there is still a scenario where the Bengals are just absolutely eviscerating the Lions, and then DeAndre Swift is seeing 7,000 dump-offs from Mr. Jared Goff. So you got to start DeAndre Swift every single week. He's a relatively safe player, but his upside is literally like a top 5 running back, but he also may just end up with like 7-8 points in the game if things just do not go his way. And maybe they finally get TJ Hawkinson super involved in this offense like he was in the first 2 weeks of the season when compared to the last 3 weeks. Maybe they're trying to force feed him the ball because maybe they realize, hey, maybe that's why the offense hasn't been looking as good. And then they force feed him the ball, and then DeAndre Swift is left in the dust. So it is very confusing every single week for Swift. You start him because you recognize the upside is there for him to be a top tier running back, but you also understand the risks that are there because the Lions just aren't very good. They're not going to be able to be running the ball a lot. For the Bengals, Joe Mixon, I was wrong on last week. I didn't think he was going to play. So I told you guys to, you know what? Calm down a little bit on Samaje Perine. He's not all that great. I doubt he's going to have a huge game up against the Packers. And then it comes out that, hey, Joe Mixon is going to play. And then on the Sunday live stream on my channel, as well as on the Awesemo Fantasy Football YouTube channel, where I live stream closer to lock on Sunday, I was talking about how, you know what? Don't play Joe Mixon. Why would you? He's clearly banged up. This is clearly going to be a scenario where it's like a split share where they don't want Joe Mixon to get hurt, and that was the case, but Joe Mixon blew the doors off the Green Bay Packers. He played well in that game with a very little snap share on the team, so it really confused me. But now this week, I feel even more confident in Mixon because he looked good last week, even when banged up, and I feel as though he is going to regain that stranglehold over the offense and the heavy workload that he was given early on the season prior to the injury. So I love Joe Mixon this week up against a not-so-hot Lions defense. For the sick column, we're just sitting down the backup of both teams. Samaje Perine, again, if Joe Mixon is given the majority of carries, then Samaje Perine is pretty much useless. And then Jamal Williams does still get use in the Lions offense, but you're begging for that touchdown. If he doesn't find his way into the end zone, he's virtually irrelevant as well. So he's a guy I'm definitely not looking to start this week, even up against a Bengals defense that isn't the greatest up against the run. Next up, we move to the Green Bay Packers at the Chicago Bears. Shout out to the Bengals and the Packers for having one of the most entertaining games last week, even if realistically the game was only entertaining because every single time they went to kick the ball at the end of the game, the kicker missed. It was hilarious. It was very fun to watch though, because at no point in the game did you ever feel like when they're lining up for these field goals that they were going to hit it at the end of the game. It felt like every time that there was just a jinx in the air, that it was just impossible to make it, that the wind, even if it was going to go in, like a 100-mile-an-hour gust of wind was just going to take the ball from about to go in to just fucking 7,000 yards away from going into the uprights. It was a very fun game to watch. Let me know down below what you guys thought about that game. Did you think it was fun to watch, or were you kind of just pissed off? Like, why is this game still going on? Why can none of these motherfuckers kick a field goal? Because I personally found enjoyment out of it, and I thought it was funny. But with that said, for the Green Bay Packers, you're starting Aaron Jones every single week. It doesn't really matter at all to me when it comes to Aaron Jones, who he's playing up against. The Chicago Bears defense, I kind of talk about this every single week, but I'm going to continue to kind of rehash this. They look like a shell of themselves. They don't look like the Packers defense from last year, from the last couple of years, where they had a very, very strong defense in Chicago. The days of that seem to be gone. Now, their defense isn't complete and utter dog shit, and I don't expect the Packers to just run a train on them and Aaron Jones to score like 6 touchdowns or something, but I think Aaron Jones has a very good shot this week to have a big game up against the Bears, so I'm firing him up. For the Bears, Damien Williams is the lead back there. Now, he did have less rushing yards last week than Khalil Herbert, but Khalil Herbert wasn't involved at all in the receiving game, and that is where Damien Williams saw a bunch of points, so I expect Damien Williams to be very involved in the game plan this week from Bill Lazor here going up against the Green Bay Packers. For the Packers, unless you predict that this is going to be a mega blowout where the Bears get their shit housed in this game, where I'm talking the Packers are up by like 24 at half, then sure, that's the game script where you can start A.J. Dillon because maybe they'll use him a decent amount at the end of the game, but when the game is close, Aaron Jones is normally in the game, so I think A.J. Dillon is a guy that really has no fantasy relevance unless Aaron Jones gets hurt, and then in that case, obviously, knock on wood, we don't root for injury, then A.J. Dillon has all of the fantasy relevance, so I am going to be sitting down A.J. Dillon as well as Khalil Herbert. Next up, we move to the L.A. Chargers at the Baltimore Ravens. In this game, I'm firing up Mr. Austin Ekeler. Austin Ekeler has looked outstanding basically every single fucking week this season. It is very clear that the new head coach there wants to get the rock in the hands of Austin Ekeler because Austin Ekeler is a dynamic playmaker. It seems like the Chargers are one of the best teams in the NFL, making an amazing comeback up against the Cleveland Browns last week, and even if this is a very close game, which I expect it to be between the Ravens and the Chargers, we'll be seeing a healthy dosage of Austin Ekeler, whether they're winning the game by 1,000,000 and running the rock out, or whether they're down by 50 and they're just dumping the ball off to Austin Ekeler, letting the guy make his fucking plays to move them up the field. The key to this offense is just getting the ball in Ekeler's hands because the guy can do a lot when given very little. So I expect Austin Ekeler to ball out up against the Baltimore Ravens, just as he has done basically every single team or every single time this season. He's been given the opportunity to run the ball, to catch the ball. He has provided for your fantasy football team. For the Ravens, we are sitting in complete and utter fucking confusion. This backfield is getting more and more murky as the weeks go on. Now, they activate Tyson Williams. They deactivate Le'Veon Bell. They send him down to the practice squad, I believe. And everyone's thinking, you know what? Maybe Tyson Williams will be given the opportunity again. And to me, when I was watching the game, Tyson Williams looked like the clear best running back on the team, but he was like the third, he was like the bottom bitch in this offense. Latavius Murray's getting the ball more than him, so is Devontae Freeman. The game is on the fucking line, and Devontae Freeman is in the game. The man must have hopped in a fucking time machine to 2015 and thought it was that year because he's giving Devontae Freeman the ball like the dude's in his prime. I don't get it. So with that said, you can't start Latavius, you can't start Tyson Williams, you can't start Devontae Freeman until it actually clears up and you know who's going to be the main guy there. So sit them all down. I'm sick of playing this fucking game in Baltimore, if I'm being honest with you. It's so annoying every single week. Larry Roundtree, unless Austin Eckler was to get hurt, knock on wood, we do not root for injuries, then he is not very valuable for fantasy football at all. Next up, we got the Minnesota Vikings at the Carolina Panthers. In this one, it should be the return of CMC, as well as the return of Dalvin Cook. A battle of the number 1 and number 2 picks in a majority of fantasy football leagues. Very interesting. The battle of 2 of the more talented running backs in the NFL. We should see a heavy dosage of both running backs if they're in the game. They're must-starts every single game that they play in, so I'm not going to go ahead and do some fucking super deep dive into why Dalvin Cook and Christian McCaffrey are really good. You want to know why they're really good? Because they're really good running backs, and they're very involved in the offense, so they're going to be great every single week. So start up Dalvin Cook, start up Christian McCaffrey. It's a no-brainer. And you sit down Madison as long as Cook plays. But obviously, if Cook doesn't play, then you play Madison. And if McCaffrey doesn't play, then you play Chuba Hubbard. But my expectation right now, and the expectation of many, is that Cook and McCaffrey will be the lead backs for their respective teams in this game. Next up, we got the Arizona Cardinals at the Cleveland Browns. Now, right now, news came out that Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt did not practice on Wednesday. While that may, holy shit, shiver me timbers, I'm worried. I wouldn't panic just yet on that because we're sitting on, it's Wednesday right now, but if it's Friday and both of them aren't practicing, then that's worrisome. I assume they just are getting a day off because of how much they get used in the offense. I'm not too sure, but at the end of the day, I didn't see anything about that really concerned me. So with that said, if they play, you're going to be playing them. So fire up Nick Chubb as well as Kareem Hunt in this game up against the Cardinals. And for the Cardinals, Chase Edmonds has kind of not looked the greatest as of recently, but if this is going to be a high-scoring game where they're throwing a decent amount, Edmonds will get a lot of receptions in this game, get a lot of targets in this game, and James Conner will be getting the goal line work, so both of them are fantasy viable in this game. But as of recently, if you had to put a gun to my head and say, hey, Nick, would you rather start Chase Edmonds or James Conner? I feel as though at this point, I would rather start James Conner, and that's kind of just how I feel. And because I said that, Chase Edmonds is going to drop like 40 fucking points on the Cleveland Browns. Next up, we got the Las Vegas Raiders at the Denver Broncos. Again, with the Raiders, this situation is just as confusing as it gets because I don't know what this team is going to look like without John Gruden. Are they going to look better play-wise with John Gruden or without him? I have no idea. We're going to feel this game out and see what happens. We are going to see what happens with the new guy calling the plays. Will things get better? Will they get worse? Or will they be exactly the fucking same? I have no idea. But that makes me a little bit more confused here about Josh Jacobs because Gruden, despite Josh Jacobs not looking amazing this year, as long as Jacobs was active, then Gruden was just giving this guy the ball. It didn't matter how productive he looked, how good he looked. He was getting fed the ball. It was almost like he was hypnotized by the fact that Jacobs was healthy, so they had to give him the ball. That's what it felt like. So I'm interested to see what it looks like now, how involved Jacobs is, what this does to Kenyon Drake. Let's see it, but I would start Josh Jacobs this week up against the Broncos. And for the Broncos, it's basically a fucking coin flip which running back you want to start. Now, I listed Javonte Williams as the sit and Melvin Gordon as the start. On the whole of the season, Melvin Gordon has looked better than Javonte Williams. And to me, that is very clear, as well. It is very clear in fantasy football. But last week, Javonte Williams looked better. Which one will it be this week? I have no idea. They're going up against the Raiders defense that hasn't looked very good as of recently, so it wouldn't be surprising if Melvin Gordon or Javonte Williams had a very big spot here. My best guess, though, is Melvin Gordon. I will be sitting down Kenyon Drake as well as Javonte Williams because the problem with Melvin Gordon and Javonte Williams in this offense is that it is such an even split share that basically every single week they do nothing except for fuck each other over. Because it's not like the split is 70-30 in one's favor. No, it's basically right down the middle, 50-50, which just hurts both of them. So, at the end of the day, I do like Gordon more, but you could talk yourself into liking Javonte Williams more this week, and basically every single week, as again, like I said, it is a true 50-50 split share. Next up, we got the Dallas Cowboys at the New England Deflatriots. In this one, I'm definitely firing up Ezekiel Elliott. You fire up Ezekiel Elliott every single week. Ezekiel Elliott looked great. How many times can you see Ezekiel Elliott? 5 times fast, Ezekiel Elliott. I think I'm probably going to end up saying his name wrong. I apologize for saying his name that many times in a row, but I shouldn't apologize because I was just saying his name, so fucking retract that from the record. Zeke going up against the Patriots. I love this matchup. Zeke looked really good last week. He somehow got hurt. His back got hit into the pylon. That's why he was laying on the ground. He was limping around because I think the wind got just knocked out of him. and he felt weird, so they took him out of the game. Unless Zeke is hurt, to me, I don't think you could really rely on Tony Pollard. Like, there's going to be games where he gets a touchdown. He got 100 yards last week, and that's great. But that's because they blew out the Giants. What happens here, if the Patriots stay at least somewhat consistent in this game, and they keep up with them a little bit, then that's not going to be the case. So, with Tony Pollard, unless Zeke is truly out, or unless they really show a strong committal in Jerry's world to giving the ball to Pollard, I just can't start him now. Damien Harris appeared to escape injury up against the Houston Texans. If he plays, I'm playing him here up against the Cowboys, but he's far from an elite start. He's kind of one of those bottom-of-the-barrel running back starts. The other Patriots, if Harris is active, I don't think you can really trust Brandon Bolden or Ramondre Stevenson. If Harris is out, then Stevenson would be the start, but it seems like Damien Harris is going to be perfectly fine to go in this game. Next up, we got the Seattle Seahawks at the Pittsburgh Steelers in what will be Sunday Night Football. So if you guys have ended up enjoying thus far, make sure to hit that subscribe button as well as hitting that like button down below. I would appreciate it a ton. Now, if Chris Carson does end up playing, it seems up in the air, at least right now on Wednesday, if he'll play or not. If he plays, this is a bad matchup up against the Steelers, and I am nervous about his workload. So Chris Carson moves from a guy that's normally like a top 16-ish running back in my rankings far down this week because of I'm not too sure how healthy he is, and if he does return, if Pete Carroll is going to 100% commit to Chris Carson. The biggest issue also is that Russell Wilson is out, Geno Smith is in, and what does that mean for Chris Carson's usage in this offense? So with that said, I am still fine playing Chris Carson if you are down tremendous at running back, but otherwise, I'd probably rather just sit him down on the bench. So again, he's kind of a bottom-of-the-barrel start. Najee Harris, you start that guy every single week. You close your eyes, you throw him into your lineup. It doesn't matter if the Steelers look good last week, but it doesn't matter if the Steelers look bad like in weeks past, or if they look like last week. Najee Harris is still a key focal point in this offense. Alex Collins will be a sit if Chris Carson does end up playing, and if Chris Carson doesn't end up playing, then again, that does kind of elevate Alex Collins to a start, but a bottom-of-the-barrel start. And final game here, we got Monday Night Football between the Buffalo Bills and the Tennessee Titans. In this game, I like Derrick Henry. You want to know why? Because the game plan of the Titans is to just run through a man, to run through the defense by Derrick Henry, to pound, pound, pound the rock gently down the stream. Merrily, 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 merrily. Life is but a dream for Derrick Henry as he just runs through. I don't know if that was a Marshawn Lynch quote. I'm pretty sure it was. It's like, what was the play call there? And he's like, just run through a motherfucker's face. That's basically what Derrick Henry does in every single game. You're playing him up against the Bills, even if the Bills defense looked amazing up against Mr. Patrick Mahomes last week. And what a bad look for Patrick Mahomes as his girlfriend, fiance, I don't know if they're married yet. I don't know if you guys follow her on Twitter. I do, because it's fucking hilarious. During the game, she just gets so angry at the game. She's like, the refs, oh, this is not my woman voice. I can't really do a woman voice. All of my voices kind of sound like Mickey Mouse, but she's basically saying, the fucking refs, they're screwing me over. The refs are bending me over a table. The refs are fucking Patrick Mahomes. And then you look at the end of the game, and they both basically have identical amount of penalties. So I don't get it. I don't get what the fuck she's so mad at. And it's funny because a lot of the internet makes fun of her, which I do kind of feel bad for, right? Because she is just this supportive woman for Mr. Patrick Mahomes, Mr. Kermit the Frog. But it is still funny to talk about because she was just so pissed off in that game. So with that said, Zach Moss, he's a start. He seems to be the lead running back for the Bills. That could change any given week, but it seems like he is the guy over Devin Singletary, and the Titans defense doesn't look great, so I think Zach Moss could have a solid showing in this game, and Devin Singletary will be a sit for me because Zach Moss is the guy. Thank you guys all so much for watching. If you did end up enjoying, make sure you do hit that subscribe button down below. I love each and every single one of you guys. I hope you have a great rest of your guys' day, and as always, good boy.